Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, welcome back, Tod Stillson, family physician and healthcare entrepreneur. Today's Kevin MD article is AI chatbots and patient safety need physician design. Todd, welcome back to the show.
Kevin, it's great to be with you, and I'm so thankful to be able to chat about really so many dynamic things going on in the world of healthcare when it comes to how patients are accessing care, how we're using AI, and how physicians are sort of responding to that. So it'll be a fun chat today.
All right. And I think we're talking offline about how AI is almost becoming that waiting room and patients are engaging with AI even before they see their physician. So you wrote about that in your article, of course. So
Yeah.
tell us more.
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, I think we all recognize because even as consumers and users of AI for all of us physicians, we often will now turn to AI to ask the common questions, to look for answers, and the things that patients are asking AI nowadays. Why does my throat hurt? Should I go to the ER? Is this medication safe? What's causing this rash? Do I need an antibiotic? They're really what a consumer's looking for. And this is what the studies show over and over again is immediate answers, some reassurance, some education, triage, or some next steps. And what AI is filling the void of is what we'd oftentimes in medicine describe as I have a friend who's a doctor, and I can just send him a quick text message and ask them this question, right?
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
just answer it for you, right? And it's trusted and it's good. But patients are now turning to AI in an increasing fashion to answer those questions before they even get to us as physicians, right? And so that waiting room where people are thinking about these things is now moved from the physician's office to the patient's smartphone.
Hmm.
Honestly, that's where it's all happening now. And I think it's very fascinating when you think about that, right?
And whenever I think about this, and what you say is exactly true, patients, of course, they consult GPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever their AI of choice is before they come and see me, and they already come with questions and tests that they have in mind already, right? And I think that this issue is partly of medicine's own making, right? Because we made it so hard to access healthcare. There's a primary care shortage, and it's just so hard to get medical information from a physician's office. Patients are just going to go to where that information is, and oftentimes that information from these large language models is good enough. They're not perfect, of course, it's good enough.
They're right.
And I think that what you're describing partly is an issue of our own making.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. It's sort of our own making, sort of the system's own making too, though, right? Let me just point out to you as you're in the trenches doing medicine still, just like I am, right? And so in your EHR, usually there's some sort of, secure messaging system. Patients can asynchronously ask you questions. Now, you and I both know that that's a win for patients, but for doctors, holy cow, when you start getting inundated with those sort of basic question messages that come from patients, and
Hmm.
a recent study that's been done that showed that that's increased by almost 20-fold for physicians. You need almost an exclusive administrative day just to take care of those asynchronous messages, right?
Hmm.
Patients sort of know that, and if, depending on how quick you respond to those, you might respond to them in 24, 48 hours. So patients, even though they might be trying to access us through those new asynchronous methods that do drive us crazy, they're now turning for those right? If you put that same question into GPT, you're going to get an answer in 5 seconds.
Hmm.
Well, what's the patient going to do, right? And so, but then as they grab that information, they're going to then compare it with what you say and so forth. So it's an interesting space that we're in right now. And I don't know about you, but I don't mind patients going to Claude or
Hmm.
GPT or Gemini or whatever to ask some questions. I mean, it sort of sets the table for our communication when they come into the office, right? And that sort of front door redefining, here's how it's looked over our generation. You and I've been practicing long enough, right? It used to be that none of that happened. And they would just show up in the office and we'd talk about whatever the issue was in their office, right? It was me and
Yeah.
them. Then it became a generation or two ago, Google. Now all of a sudden there was a Google search that
Yeah.
preceded the visit, and they would come in with their articles and things and questions. But nowadays, this is the interesting part. AI chatbots really do some triaging, and they do it in a different way than Google.
Hmm.
Google kind of provides websites and information you read, and you sort of have to sort it out yourself. But the AI chatbots, as you and I both know, it gives recommendations.
Yeah.
It provides interpretation. It actually prioritizes. It actually explains. It does things that the old Google search didn't do. And for patients, that really scratches an itch that they have when it comes to these things. And quite honestly, what they do with that information, Kevin, is they decide, am I even going to go to the doctor?
Yeah.
You know, do I want to self-manage this? Do I want to go see a naturopath? Do I actually maybe choose a virtual doctor and not my regular primary care in the bricks and mortar clinic doctor, right? It sort of empowers them in a different way. And it's just because AI provides that information to them in a different way. And Kevin, you and I can sit around and complain about that. We can fuss about it. We can decide, well, that just isn't right. I should be the one that owns all that
Hmm.
information. But the reality is that cow's out of the barn
Yeah.
and it's done. And so we kind of have to start to redesign even how we interact with patients because of it.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And you asked me earlier whether I get upset or angry if patients use AI before they see me. And the answer is, of course, not, because, like you said, just put yourself in the patient's shoes. If you have a health concern or an issue, are you going to wait 48 to 72 hours for an answer from your physician's office?
Right.
Or are you going to go to these AI tools to get an answer in 5 to 10 seconds, right? So I think both of us would also use AI tools to get that answer.
We do.
We would do exactly what our patients would do, right?
Yeah.
So of course we're not going to blame patients, and of course I understand patients are using AI tools. So the question as that we need to ask, of course, is we as physicians, how is our role going to evolve
Yeah.
now that patients are using these AI tools before they come see you? What is the new
Hmm.
definition of what it means to be a physician today?
Yeah, that is a great question. And let me just say right away, I don't know the answer to that one. That's a big one. And even medical education is going to change dramatically because of all of these evolving changes. But what I see are some big stakeholders in this process, right? You've got consumers and patients. They've always been there and should be there. You've got us as physicians as important stakeholders. You've got our health systems as important stakeholders, and you have the AI companies themselves as important stakeholders. Let me just tell you, I think we both recognize this and others see it. The AI stakeholders, AI owners are going for the land grab. Okay.
Hmm.
They truly want to be the front door for these patients and sort of, I guess for lack of a better term, become their go-to for everything, not just
Hmm.
healthcare. But of course, with healthcare representing about 20% of our GDP, I mean, they recognize the true value and the money is in healthcare. And
Hmm.
so they've spent the last many years, building into this. Some of your listeners might actually have side jobs that are part of feeding these LLM companies with their health information and data. A lot of medical students
Yeah.
and residents do that, right? And they're just feeding it, feeding it, feeding it. It's because these companies want to grab that space. And we're seeing it at an increasing level, I mean, in terms of what's happening. We also, though, and this is what I'm going to also give our health systems credit, right? Our health systems are not just sort of passively, standing back and going, you know what? We're not going to do anything about this.
Yeah.
They are responding and trying to resist the full land grabs. Their health systems are trying to integrate AI into their processes, into their resourcing of physicians and all the things that go on with that. And they're trying to ask the right questions about clinical governance, right? And then you have the physicians that are getting involved both independently and employed. And if you're employed, you're going to be in a committee, probably in the health system, that sort of organizes this. And if you're independent, you're sort of making your own decisions about how you adapt those things. And so it is very dynamic in terms of what's going on. And what I just my point that I would make in the article, point that you and I have talked about, is don't be passive in terms of your involvement. We do not have to just accept that the AI companies are so big and so strong, they're going to grab the land and we have no say, right?
Hmm.
Nor do we have to be, I don't want to use a negative term here, but we don't have to just be passive bond servants to do their
Mhm.
and pour all that data into their LLMs either, right? So let's join into the fray and actually use our brains and make a difference for the patient so that the AI that's being presented to the patient is actually governed in the right way to provide the accurate information that's needed.
Now, what are some ways physicians can do that? And I know that you, as a healthcare entrepreneur, you have a product that
Yeah.
does something that you're talking about. But
Sure.
short of creating a whole company, create an app, a lot of physicians don't have your entrepreneurial acumen. For the physicians who are just listening to you for the first time, what are some easy ways they can do what you say?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So number one, educate yourself, right? Just be aware, read. That's what physicians are really good at. We love we're curious learners. And so don't passively sit back and let this sort of come at you. Read about it and engage and see what's happening in this landscape. Listen to your patients, what they're doing actually in the front lines marketplace. And then where are there are natural fits for you to get involved? So if you're independent or looking for some side work, there's a lot of health tech companies out there looking for physicians to join their medical advisory councils, to serve in their telemedicine groups, to really be a part of defining what the future can look like in medicine. So you can actually get paid, you can participate, you can be involved in these. If you're in a health system, oftentimes it's going to be in the medical informatics group or maybe in some of the digital health committees that exist in your health system. And you can very much volunteer to be involved in those. And oftentimes the EHRs themselves, when we think about the epics of the world, right, they're getting heavily into these spaces as well. And they often need physician leads in your organization to be a part of those digital integrations. And so, jump in, volunteer, actively get engaged in the process, understand what's happening, and don't view it, Kevin, as a black box. This is not a black box. Every input that governs what the output is, right? And so you can have the opportunity to influence what that system is that's built
Mhm.
around that AI product to make sure that the output is properly governed, not by a non-medical person, i.e., a tech leader, but by a real physician or a real medical person. So that's what I see in the landscape of opportunities to get involved. And I'm excited to say I think a lot of physicians are doing that in a big way.
Now, I've seen those job listings where these AI companies are soliciting physician help to train and be involved with their whatever AI models. Isn't it, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Isn't it a little bit of a tension here?
Mhm.
Physicians are lending their expertise to these large language models to become more quote unquote physician-like. Isn't
Yeah.
there a danger that these AI systems would learn from these physicians and eventually replace what these physicians can do? So on one hand, yes, they are getting involved, but on the other, are they training their replacements?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it depends on the leadership of the AI company that you're working with, what their ultimate end game goals are, right? And we can sort of have a conspiracy model that exists here, if you will, that does look like that. Like, hey, what are you doing giving all this information to them? Because at the end of the day, they're going to eliminate you. Well, there's probably some truth to that. Let me just be frank, right? But there's also plenty of companies who are built in a different way, built in a way that is for the best of the benefit of the community and the benefit of the culture that they're working in, and they're not intending to take physician jobs or medical jobs. They're really meant to assist us to function and adapt in a different way. I like to say this, and so those are the companies that you would want to identify with, right? You'd want to support, you'd want to align with. And this is how it goes in a free market, right, Kevin? Who's gonna offer to pay you the most money? Sometimes it's going to be the one who wants to eventually take your job. So be careful with taking the best price for that KB, we call it knowledge base, the information you know. But make sure you just dig into it a little bit deeper and make sure you're, from a missional standpoint, aligned with what's going on with those companies. And there's a lot of companies out there doing it. So there's a great check that you just said, make sure that you are aligned properly with where the direction of the company is going when you do it. But at the end of the day, I think, Kevin, we're all challenged by the fact that we are having to learn how to doctor differently. And that's how I would just say that it's coming at us. Like we are all learning. And as you and I both know, 80% of physicians are using AI every day in some fashion in their professional lives. That's not even in their personal lives. Gosh, I'd venture to say
Mhm.
90 to 95% are using it every day in their personal lives, even. Okay. And so we're all learning how to adapt to doctor differently to support our patients. And it just doesn't have to be a passive, just feed it to us. It can be an active sort of thing. I mean, just think about the younger generations, Kevin. I just want to point out to you, right? There's a behavioral shift happening in the younger not just of doctors, but of people, of consumers, right? And their digital native generations, they actually don't distinguish between internet and AI. It's
Mhm.
all digital to them, and it's just natural. And what, we would ask Google 15 years ago, now we see that 50% of Generation Z and millennials, they ask AI health questions every day. 50%, that's what the data shows, right? And so they're leaning into it. Even the young physicians and nurses and pharmacists and other healthcare professionals are leaning into it with open evidence and others that are supporting our knowledge base in this process. And so we all have to learn how to doctor differently. We have to be engaged in this. And that's the message for our audience and for you and I, even in our own professional life, right? Don't be passive, be active, go out and be involved in this because honestly, in your exam room now, sometimes you're the second opinion. You're not the first opinion that the patients receive before they get there. They're bringing in the information to you and saying, "What do you think about this, doc?" And again, you can either sort of act shocked or you can already know this is coming when you get there and sort of use it to lever it to your advantage, right?
We're talking to Tod Stillson, family physician and healthcare entrepreneur. Today's Kevin MD article is AI chatbots and patient safety need physician design. Todd, as always, we'll end with your take home messages to the Kevin MD audience.
Yeah, healthcare is being built, or it's always been built around access. And whoever comes first usually has an opportunity to define what shapes the patient journey through the healthcare system, right? Today, AI is going for the land grab. Okay, the AI companies are going for the land grab, and we as physicians need to get out in front of that and do what we've done all of our lives. Think of patients first, and make sure that we're in that sequence of the patient journey and have an ability to govern, organize, and support it. And to be honest, learn how to doctor differently along the way, but also to define it with the governance that we know is critical to the best outcomes for the patient, right? That's what we do all of our careers and all of our lives. So don't be passive about the opportunity, jump in and do it. Consumers are already there, healthcare companies are there, AI companies are there, physicians, let's get on board.
Todd, as always, thank you so much for your insights and perspective. And thanks again for coming back on the show.
Yeah, Kevin, it's great to be with you. Take care.